This video is by request, so I'm going to show you the difference between the 6, 7, and 11 blade billet compressor wheels and why you should choose one over the other. Here's a 6x6, 7x7, and 11 blade, and another 7x7 in the back. So this one actually has the least blades, if you think about it, but it has the most major blades, because this one has 7 big ones and 7 small ones, and this one has 6 big blades and 6 small blades, and this one's also a 7x7. This is a force performance compressor wheel. This one also has a cutback, so it's sloped down. The main thing that I want to cover over this, which will help you decide which compressor wheel that you want, is that usually with the 11 blade wheels, they are very torquey. They're supposed to spool up faster, yet they weigh more than the other wheels, because actually I might want to go back and weigh it. I'm pretty sure it weighs more than the other wheels because it's got the most major amount of major blades, so it has more material. So it's supposed to spool up faster because of it having more blades, but it maxes out sooner, so you'll peak at less boost with the 11 blade compressor wheel. With the 6 and 7 blade wheels, you'll be able to see higher boost levels and make more power at those boost levels. And the reason is because you have more room for more air volume, because you have more space in between the blades. Just like you see, the 6 blade and the 7 blade. So the 6 blade should make more power over the 7 blade. And then the 11 blade should make the least amount of power between the three. Now this wheel isn't the same as these two, so you just have to pretend that it is, because I don't think I have a 6 blade 20G compressor wheel. The other thing you want to keep in mind is surge. The 11 blade tends to surge more over the 6 and the 7 blade. The reason for that is because the 11 blade is trying to push more air in at lower boost levels, which is where it's more efficient. And with that, usually if you're just driving around and such, and not in it, not boosting it very hard, sometimes it can surge because that air isn't able to escape fast enough on the exhaust side of the turbo compared to what is trying to compress in the inside of the engine. So when that happens, usually you can try and go with a bigger exhaust wheel to try and compensate for that. Mainly you see 11 blade wheels factory from the 14B and the 17C and the 19C. Now when they do that, you'll notice that the 11 blade compressor wheels are much smaller than the turbine wheel. Like the 19C and 17C, the 17C is 48 millimeter and the 19C is 50 millimeter, or close to that. And the turbines that they used were 55 by 65 millimeter. And then the same for the 14B. The 14B wheel I think was around 40 millimeter. And then the turbine it used was 49 by 55. So the turbine was bigger. So yeah, the main reason for that is because if you had a smaller turbine wheel, it'd be more likely to surge with that 11 blade compressor wheel. I usually just recommend the 7 blade, mainly because you won't have to have any problems with surging with the 7 blade. The 6 blade, you probably won't have issues with it surging either. As far as horsepower wise and the spool, 6 in comparison to 7. I have never actually went out and drove the car with one over the other. I feel like the comparison is not going to be that big of a difference, though I've never tried it. Usually I just tell people to go with the 7 blade because it's hard for me to determine how to determine when to go with the 6 over the 7. Now you'll notice this 7 blade wheel here, it's cut back. The reason for that is to try and use a bigger compressor wheel, but the reason it's cut back is to try and help it spool up better with having a larger wheel. I don't usually like having the compressor wheels cut back. I just kind of think it's in a way a dumb idea, but I mean, I guess if you're going for spool and not more power, I guess it would make sense to cut them back. You know, each wheel is designed to make a certain amount of power, so if you have a wheel and it's designed for this amount of power, like 450 horsepower, but you really only care to make 400, and you'd be wanting to sacrifice or cut down the spool, it kind of makes sense to have the wheel cut back a little bit. Now this wheel, that's a FP Red. I think that's an FP Red compressor wheel. So that's still good for between 550 and 600 horsepower, I think. I really like the extended tip wheels. I just think it makes more sense because it's extended to help grab more air. Supposedly it's supposed to flow 10% more over stock because of that. So this one, you know, you would cut the airflow off a little bit because of it being cut back. Now another thing you could also talk about, I guess it's a little bit different of a discussion, where you have an exducer size that is really big in comparison to the inducer size. Now the reason for that is because if you want to have a more efficient compressor wheel throughout various boost ranges, it makes sense to have a wheel like that. I usually don't like that idea just because it adds a lot more weight to the compressor wheel, and I just think it's kind of unnecessary. One other thing I want to cover is the tip height of the compressor wheel. The tip height is this distance of the blade to the back of the wheel, just the end of it. And you can see that this one's very short, but this one is very tall. This one is, I think, 7.8 millimeter. This is a 60-1 compressor wheel. They're known for having a very tall tip height. The thing that I do want to mention about the tip height being so tall is that we compared an EF4 compressor wheel that has a very short tip height in comparison to a 25G compressor wheel that has a very tall tip height, and they both were about the same in horsepower, like nearly identical. But the difference in those two wheels I must mention is that the EF4 compressor wheel has an 82.3 exducer, and then the 25G had a 78 millimeter exducer. So they both flew about the same amount of air, despite one having a taller tip height. So it's hard to really know which one to choose, and you probably shouldn't choose it based on tip height, but I do like for the wheel to have quite a bit of tip height, just because I feel like it flows more. I mean, I don't know that it's necessarily true, but it kind of does make sense that you'd have that extra I guess that extra space where the air can flow after leaving the compressor wheel between the housing and wheel. It kind of makes sense to have it big in that area. That way you can have more compressed air volume to move past into the intercooler pipe as quickly as possible. Another thing to add you may think about is extended tip, where the blade comes out this way, extra distance to help compress more air. Like this one, you see it's not very extended tip, not in comparison to this one and these two wheels. That extended tip is very popular. However, and you think about it this way, but it's also the height of these wheels are much taller than the 20G wheel too. I think that makes more sense for a performance compressor wheel to have both extended tips, or the extended height and the extended tip of the blade. However, how much of a difference does it make? That's kind of hard for me to determine that. I don't usually go and test every single wheel that I have here. Mainly what people pay me to do is rebuild their turbochargers that are broken to restore them like new or better than new. And the other thing that they pay me to do is to machine housings and repair things for them. So I'm more in that sense of business rather than research and development. You know, it has the balancing marks. Like this one doesn't have one because supposedly this one turned out perfect, not needing any balancing. Now this one just had a little cut there. See, this one was balanced with an assembly, and so was this one, and it was balanced as an individual piece before being balanced as an assembly. This one has, this is an original Mitsubishi compressor wheel. See, it's got cuts taken out of it. These are balancing marks. I had a couple, maybe it was one or two people, they told me that the compressor wheel is broken. It's got a missing piece on it. These are actually balance marks. It does, I mean, it is a unique way to balance the wheel. You really don't have to cut it like that, but that's the way it was done from Mitsubishi. And that covers it up. So if you have any other questions, you can comment them below.